This is the highly anticipated video game, The Beatles Rock Band, which goes on sale tomorrow. The game allows players to pick up the guitar, bass, mic, or drums almost as if they were on stage and really experience the Beatles' music firsthand. Ringo and Paul McCartney introduced the game in June at the Electronic Entertainment Expo in downtown LA. And potential gamers and Beatle maniacs have been waiting ever since. Even though that band broke up 40 years ago, can you believe it? 40 years ago, Beatlemania is still alive. And because of tomorrow's release of this new video game and the remastered Beatles catalog, the Fab Four's music is really being introduced to a new generation. NBC4's Carrie Berglund previews all that will happen on number 9, number 9, number 9.
It's Beatlemania for the postmodern world. The boys from Liverpool who kick-started rock and roll with their revolution and evolution, now 40 years after the band broke up and with only 2 of the original 4 still living, are about to become a new version of RockBand.
Baby says she's mine, you know, she tells me all the time, you know, she said so.
Of course, for people like Chris Carter, host of Breakfast with the Beatles on KLOS, the refocus on the Fab Four is not only good for business, but makes good sense.
Well, I think that the idea of the Rock Band is to kind of introduce the younger generation to the music of the Beatles. The weird thing for the young generation is they see the Beatles in the different eras, and it confuses the heck out of them because they'll see them, you know, with the mop tops going, "I Want to Hold Your Hand," and then the next song they'll see John with long hair, and you know, is that the same group? So I think it's going to put it into perspective for them. It's going to kind of tell the story with the visuals. Don't forget, it's a game, so they're going to get to play the game, and that's really what hooks them in.
There is a certain success factor built into this product because the songbook of the Beatles is, simply put, part of the DNA of the universe.
I wanna hold your hand. Till tomorrow to unpack my case.
And while gaming stores gear up to lay down the beat of the Beatles' Rock Band, here at Amoeba Records, number 9, number 9, number 9 is going to translate into huge numbers. They're already confident of that.
You think you've lost your love.
A new collection of the Beatles' catalog is also being released, finally remastered to allow the band to catch up to modern sound technology.
They're one of the great studio bands, and they made the greatest use of sound effects and studio wizardry and trippy strings and pedals and effects and influences and sitars, and so just sonically they're one of the most interesting bands ever, and they've never sounded good on CD.
Amoeba has always carried the Beatles vinyl and CDs, but tomorrow a chance to meet the Beatles all over again, or for the very first time. Or at least it may sound that way.
Not only do the old fans get the music remastered, which is basically sonically upgrading the music, but all the young kids who've been hearing about the Beatles from the parents who are buying the remasters.
Or the grandparents.
Yeah, they got this Rock Band thing. So it cleverly ties the generations together in such a way that you get the old and the young, and then you get the older sniffing around about, what is this Rock Band thing? You know, what is this?
So please, love me do.
In Burbank, I'm Carrie Berglund, Channel 4 News.
Oh, that was so much fun to watch. Now, to give us more insight into this new game and the new CD that will add to the legend of the Beatles, I'm joined in studio by a man who is definitely an expert on all things Beatles. Chris Carter is host of Breakfast with the Beatles, America's longest-running Beatles-based radio show, which can be heard every Sunday morning on KLOS FM from 8 until 11. Okay,
Right.
You've interviewed Ringo and Paul and George Harrison before he passed away.
Yes.
Why did it take so long to get the Beatles on the map with this sort of thing?
That's a great question, and we've been waiting. You know, the originals came out in 1987, kind of the advent of the CD, and over the years, you know, so many other artists have had their music remastered, the Rolling Stones, David Bowie, I think Elvis Costello 3 times, but no Beatles, and it's been a long wait, but finally, tomorrow, it'll hit the stores, so.
What's the difference between remastered and remixed here?
Well, what remastering basically means is the songs as you know them stay the same. You're not going to hear any new verses or new lead guitar solos or anything like that. It basically takes the existing sound and sonically improves it. And you know, since 1987, when CDs first came out, you know, there's been many advances, so we're going to get to hear some of them now.
Well, I couldn't help but notice in listening to Carrie Berglund's piece that kids are going to have a geography book. There is no USSR anymore, is there?
Well, that's why you have to go back to the USSR.
Do you find that that there are a lot of younger kids really listening to the music now?
Yeah, and the fact that both their music is being, you know, re-released, and you have the RockBand, I think it's great because it kind of brings the two generations together, you know. The older fans have been waiting for this music to sound better for years, and you got the young kids now who I think sometimes get a bit confused with the Beatles because they'll see them, you know, with the mop tops going, yeah, 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 and then they'll see him singing Revolution, and, you know, John will have long hair and look completely different than he did in the early days, and I think they get confused how the timeline goes down, so maybe this will help that a bit. Are
there any things that don't play with the young generation in terms of Beatles music?
I don't think so. You know, when Paul McCartney plays in concert, I always tell our listeners, it's the only time you can go to a rock concert and see a 65-year-old guy singing along next to a, you know, 30-year-old banker and 5 kids, you know, all singing the same song. I don't think you really see that at any other event.
Well, I have to confess that when I heard we were doing the interview today, I called my 16-year-old, who likes to play video games, of course, and I said, do you know who the Beatles are? And he went, yeah. And I said, well, have you ever downloaded any of their music? And he was able to rattle off 4 or 5 immediately. When you get a 16-year-old downloading the music and their parents are singing along, kind of interesting.
Well, funny thing, not to correct you, Colleen, but the Beatles music still, you can't download it. So he's heard it elsewhere. He's got it from friends. But one of the interesting...
That might be. Maybe he's in his dad's collection or something.
Yeah, maybe. You know, one of the interesting things about these remasters is the fact that not only did we not have the new remastered CDs all these years, the Beatles pretty much the only artists that had not allowed their music to be downloaded yet. So that's still something in the future.
Trust me, I will check that out when I get home.
Check that out with that 16-year-old.
Anything you'd like to add? Anything we missed? Have you seen the game? Have you played the game?
I have seen bits and pieces of it. I just want to say, you know, tomorrow you get your choice of stereo or mono Beatles, and we always like to suggest the mono Beatles because that's really the way the Beatles intended you to hear it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for coming in.
Hey,
it was a lot of fun.
My pleasure.
Can't wait to see it tomorrow. All right, we'll be back with more. Fritz is in the background right after this.